Welcome back to the channel. Today we are checking out a video from History Hit, Secrets of Hever Castle, home of Anne Boleyn. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. We actually looked up the correct pronunciation before the video just to be sure.
I really don't know anything about either Hever Castle or Anne Boleyn. All I know is that Anne Boleyn was a wife of King Henry VIII, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe she was his second wife.
Hever Castle is one of the most remarkable historic houses in Britain. It's got 700 years of turbulent history, like glitz and glamour, as well as decline and fall.
That was
Today,
beautiful.
I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour and show you my favourite bits. Let's go.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, I love
the
this.
moat around it.
Oh my goodness.
And how the garden was like on the other side. That's cool.
Look at the homes behind it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I actually wanted to see those a little bit closer up.
Ooh.
Wow.
Okay, is that little village right there part of the castle grounds? Or
I know, that's what I was thinking.
Was that added later on in more modern times?
It looks like it belongs to this time period of this castle.
Some of it, yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, this whole picture here is stunning, guys.
If that's just everyday houses of people,
I know.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be so cool to look out your back window and see a castle?
Yeah, it's so idyllic.
Yeah.
It really is.
Cute.
First off, here's a potted history of the place. At the start of the 13th century, this site was home to a timber, motte and bailey castle. This would have been quite a basic
Look how
structure,
high up that
a timber
is.
hall with just a few outbuildings.
So did they build that hill up to put a castle on top or something?
No, it was like a wooden tower, it said.
But in 1271, during the reign of King Edward I, the design was taken up a notch. Permission was granted to strengthen the house at Hever with a wall of stone and lime, and to crenellate it in the manner of a castle. So, a gatehouse was built to replace the original timber hall.
So, is she saying this is not technically a castle, it's a gatehouse? Is that what she's saying?
No.
Because I noticed that when we were above, I could see what looked to be Tudor framing in here, Tudor style framing, but I'm not 100% sure. It kind of just looked like it from a distance.
And it was from this gatehouse, which still stands today, that more additions were made in the 14th century.
Okay.
Soon there were crenellated walls with towers on the corners. They added a moat and even a great hall.
It's hard to imagine, but in the 14th century, the exterior walls would have been whitewashed with a mixture of powdered chalk and water, and even decorated in bright, bold colours. This wasn't just to make the castle more imposing, it was also to protect the stone.
That would have been interesting.
I wonder how that works.
Yeah.
All sorts of people have lived here at Hever Castle.
You see that little bridge here?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Since the 13th century, it's passed through 37 different owners and 13 families.
Wow.
It was originally the home of William de Hever, who gave the castle its name. And in the 15th century, the Fiennes family lived here, the ancestors of the great explorer Sir Ranulph Fiennes.
Of course, the most famous of Hever's residents were the Boleyn family, who then spelt their name B-U-L-L-E-N.
Boleyn.
The castle was bought by Geoffrey Boleyn in 1462, and it was his grandson, Thomas Boleyn, who lived here and raised his 3 children, Mary, Anne and George. And it was Anne Boleyn, the middle child, who became Henry VIII's second wife.
Okay, second wife, okay.
Spoiler alert, the Boleyns' rise to power didn't last long. In fact, it was cut brutally short when Anne and George Boleyn were accused of adultery and incest and executed in 1536.
What?
Wait, so we're talking about Anne with her brother?
George, the brother, right?
George was the brother, I believe, right?
Well, that's awkward.
And so she was obviously had to have already been married to Edward at that point.
Henry.
I mean, King Henry, yes. Who am I thinking? Edward. Who is Edward?
It's on your mind.
I don't even know who Edward is, but oh, wow. Okay. So is that how she met her end, I suppose?
Oh my goodness, that would be awful. An awful way to go.
Yeah.
And over that, how embarrassing. I don't know if it was true.
Yeah, don't know if it's true, but
or not, but
yeah,
yikes.
Okay.
Father, Thomas Boleyn, was shunned at court and died 2 years later.
With the Boleyns out the picture, Hever Castle came into the possession of King Henry. And in 1540, Henry gave it to his 4th wife after he annulled the marriage.
Oh my goodness.
This was Anne of Cleves, also known as the Flanders Mare.
Since the Tudor period, Hever passed through the hands of several different families and gradually fell into decline. It may well have fallen into total disrepair had it not been snapped up by the richest man in America, William Waldorf Astor.
Astor threw his immense fortune into refurbishing and reimagining Hever as a grand Tudor fortress, filling it with ornate oak panelling and magnificent Tudor portraits. He created a lavish family home that could indulge his passion for history and impress his VIP guests.
So he's the one who turned
So
it
what we're
Tudor
looking
style?
at today is a real hodgepodge of 700 years of tweaks and alterations.
Oh,
That's crazy.
that is
Even
cool.
the moat has caused all sorts of problems in the past. We're on quite low ground here, and as the moat used to join the River Eden, it would spill over the banks and flood the castle's courtyard.
Of course, Astor sorted all of that out in his renovations, and in 1906 he took out the crumbling brick bridge and reinstated this wooden drawbridge, which can still be raised. No doubt useful for any guests who had turned
camera?
up late.
Yeah.
This gatehouse is home to two of the oldest surviving portcullises in England, one of which can still be operated. And here in the castle courtyard, you can clearly see the difference between the 13th
Wow,
century
look at the
gatehouse
vines.
and the timber-framed Tudor edition.
Tudor edition, that's what I saw from
In
the
Anne
top.
Boleyn's day, there would have been 4 doorways on each side rather than the 2 we see today. The east wing was where the servants worked and slept, and the west wing had the private rooms of the Boleyn family.
Wonder what kind of plant that is, all
was
those
gonna say,
vines.
The
Spring.
13th century gatehouse, the oldest part of the castle. This is where William de Hever would have eaten, slept and entertained his guests, and it was pretty luxurious. It even had a guardrobe, aka a loo, which emptied directly down into the moat.
Ew.
Look out below! Sorry.
It's a pretty gruesome collection in here. There are executioner swords, pieces of armour, and even instruments of torture. And one of the
goodness.
strangest pieces are these scolds' bridles. These were designed to be worn by outspoken women, a bit like myself, who were suspected to be witches, shrews, or scolds.
Oh my
Oh
goodness.
my goodness.
Next, we're heading to the inner hall. In the Boleyn's day, this was the kitchen where great feasts were prepared. And Thomas Boleyn even had high ceilings installed to help dissipate the smoke.
Of course, it doesn't look much like a kitchen these days, as much of this panelling and woodwork was installed by
Wow, look
William
at that.
Waldorf Astor, who used this as his grand reception room.
Astor employed 748 men to refurbish the castle, and he was careful
Wow.
to preserve as
That's
much
crazy.
of the original structure as possible,
That's
with
good.
strict instructions to use historically authentic tools, materials, and techniques where possible.
That's good.
But my favourite detail in this room is this portrait of Elizabeth de Valois, who was the 3rd wife of Philip II of Spain. Now, it's a beautiful portrait of Elizabeth, but what's most interesting is this pear-shaped pearl hanging in her hair.
This pearl is La Peregrina. It's believed to be one of the most symmetrical natural pearls ever found. It was also owned by Queen Mary I, and it stayed in the hands of royalty, Hollywood royalty that is, when Richard Burton bought it for Elizabeth Taylor.
And the pearl actually returned to Hever Castle when Elizabeth Taylor wore it whilst filming here at the 1969 film Anne of a Thousand Days. Isn't that neat?
Interesting.
Wait, he was king, she was barely 18, and in 1,000 days they played out the most passionate, shocking love story. Is that
Wow,
That's
based on Anne Boleyn and King Henry?
I guess that, yeah, it has to be.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Okay, the whole King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn story seems like it's probably a very interesting story to look into.
I feel like King Henry VIII was a very wild and controversial figure. It seems like it. I don't know much about him.
Yeah.
But if he's been married however many times, he's got to be pretty.
I don't know how many times he's been married.
We know at least 4 because that was his 4th wife.
Yeah,
got
that's true.
annulled. So
Yeah.
he probably got married after that too. So
Yeah, I think specifically these two, though, I think they had a very interesting story. It just sounds like it. And knowing there was a movie made about just these two together and their 1,000 days they were together, it seems like.
oh, is that what it's? Oh,
Yeah.
they're 1,000 days.
She was barely 18 and he was a king. Yeah, I bet that'd be interesting to look into, guys. We're going to have to do that sometime.
The other bit of bling to look out for in this room is this gilt bronze clock on the mantelpiece. This is a replica of what Henry VIII gave Anne Boleyn on the morning of their marriage in 1532.
1532.
I know historians talk all about the significance of this representing the time finally coming or time running out, but for me, it's far more simple. Just hours before the wedding, Henry gave Anne a clock. I think he's saying, please don't be late. And who can blame him? Caterers are expensive.
The next stop on our tour is the drawing room. Originally used in Tudor time as domestic offices, this had a new lease of life in 1905. For William Waldorf Astor kitted it out with this extravagant Elizabethan-style panelling made from oak and holly.
This is the room where Astor
look at the ceiling.
Many of his famous friends. We know that Queen Elizabeth II,
that looks like a beautiful
Churchill,
area to
and
write
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle were among his guests. You can picture the scene in here. Astor here with all his pals, a few dukes, a few earls, all drinking champagne, gin and tonics perhaps, and all making lots of hearty jokes. A whale of a time, in fact.
I love that.
Oh, I love the sound of piano, yeah.
Me too.
They were entertained lavishly, and I'm sure they were impressed by Astor's little surprise behind this door. He transformed the medieval turret into his very own
I love
drink
secret
cupboard.
doors.
Bottoms up.
After a few bottles of champagne, Astor brought his guests into the dining room.
Wow.
In Tudor
my
times, this was the Great
goodness.
Hall, initially opened right up to the roof rafters. The Boleyns would have dined in this room, and it was here that they entertained Henry VIII and his retinue.
Oh.
My favourite thing in this room is this impressive gilt lock. This belonged to Henry VIII. The king
beautiful.
was so paranoid about assassination, he always travelled with a locksmith, and it was this lock that was fitted to his bedroom wherever he stayed, and then removed when the royal party moved on.
Man.
That is crazy.
Now, if there's one lesson you must take away from a visit to Hever Castle, it's that you must never run up the stairs. For some of these steps, like this one, are different depths.
Oh,
This
my
wasn't
goodness.
because it was poorly designed or hurriedly built. This was, like in many medieval castles, an ingenious safety feature.
The idea was that if you lived here, you would know which steps were the odd ones, but for invaders, they would be thrown off balance, trip up, and give the defenders a crucial advantage.
That is
The next
genius.
stop on the tour is my favourite room of the whole castle, Anne Boleyn's bedroom.
Anne Boleyn was probably born in 1501, and she spent her childhood here at Hever Castle, and historians think that this was probably her bedroom.
It seems that Anne was fond of Hever. Even when she was a young woman and courting Henry VIII, Anne would often return here. In fact, 7 of the king's love letters were sent to Anne while she was staying at Hever in 1528.
And here she is, wearing her famous bee pendant. She has a daring French-style hood revealing her dark hair. As a young woman, Anne was considered to be intelligent and witty, if not traditionally beautiful. The Venetian ambassador described Anne as not one of the handsomest women in the world. She is of middling stature, with a swarthy complexion, long neck, wide mouth, bosom not much raised, and in fact has nothing but the king's great appetite, and her eyes, which are black and beautiful.
Some of Anne's most
Black
personal
and beautiful.
possessions are on display here at Hever Castle. In this room you can see 2 beautifully illuminated prayer books, which were signed
That
and
is beautiful.
annotated by Anne herself.
These kind of personal prayer books were popular in England from the 13th century until the Reformation. They earned the name the Book of Hours from the short services to the Virgin Mary, which were read at 8 fixed hours during the day, including matins and vespers.
Like 8
It's
times a day
incredible
they
to
read
imagine
this?
Anne Boleyn walking these corridors. And of course, Henry would have visited on several occasions as they were courting. As Henry would have been given the grandest rooms available, he probably stayed in this room when he came to visit.
So, after being lavishly fed and watered by the Boleyn family with a great feast of pies, game, roasted meats, custards and jellies, King Henry would have probably climbed into this bed and snuggled up to sleep.
You know, that's something I wish I could just do, is go and be a fly on the wall.
I know.
And like see what it was like to be at dinner time.
Like in that giant hall.
You know,
like,
back in 1500
Yeah.
or whatever, and just see like what it was
really
like,
cool.
what they're talking about, the energy, and obviously I'd love to see what the spread on the table looked like for a king at that point.
Yeah.
She just mentioned all the stuff it would be, but like really, what would it really look like? what would it look like to us today? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would we think it looked delicious? You know what I mean? I have no idea, really. I mean, what that really would look like. You know, that's something I'd like to look into, is like what it really would look like to the food back 500 years ago for a king. Like, what were they, when they sat down to eat dinner, what did it look like? You know, what kind of foods were on the table?
Perhaps dreaming of Anne Boleyn or glory in France, and probably snoring quite a lot, I imagine. Hey, that's private. This bed dates from 1540, and it's a tester bed.
1540.
The term derives from the Latin word tester, meaning head, because these beds were headed by the solid wooden canopy
I wonder what the mattress is made
above
of.
it. Cozy.
That's a good question.
Look, I do love Greensleeves, but can you play Wonderball?
Next up, we're heading to the Staircase Gallery, built in around 1506 by Thomas Boleyn. The gem in this room is this portrait of Mary, Queen of Scots, in mourning.
This portrait was recently discovered in France and is believed to have come from the studio of François Clouet, a French Renaissance miniaturist and painter. It's thought that Mary's white mourning gowns were because of the recent death of 3 close family members.
Was that the other sister?
This is probably Hever Castle's most famous room, the Long Gallery. It was built in the 16th century and extends across the entire width of the castle.
Wow.
Here the Boleyns might have entertained guests, displayed art collections, and even taken exercise.
I love
The
that.
panelling in this room dates from the 16th century, but the meringue-like ceiling was another Astor addition. It was made in London and brought to Hever on a steam train. Astor even had the train tracks extended just
Oh my
goodness.
goodness.
Installed.
Can you imagine?
The most exciting thing about this room, though, are the 18 original portraits on the wall. These tell the epic saga from the Wars of the Roses all the way through to the Reformation, aka a lot of family drama.
Most of what we see at Hever is really the work of William Waldorf Astor, and he spent a lot of time on re-landscaping the gardens too.
From these dizzying heights, you can see all the re-landscaping.
Oh my goodness, I love the look of the stone.
You can
So
see
weathered.
the maze just next to the castle. And beyond that, the Italian garden.
Wow.
He had 800 men contracted to
That's beautiful.
excavate
Oh,
the
look at
38-acre
this.
lake, and they were instructed in December 1904 to carry on the works regularly and continuously by day and night, except on Sundays when so ordered.
So, there you have it, the magnificent history of Hever Castle in a...
Wow. Guys, what a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Both inside and out. I love the gardens, what we saw of them. I love everything about this, the history of this. This is a castle I definitely would like to visit.
Seems like a lot of it isn't original, you know, from when Anne Boleyn would have lived
they've
there.
added
but
onto it.
I would like to go back in time to see that.
Oh, I
to
know.
See what it looked like pre-updating.
It would be amazing. And I tell you what, there's something about weathered stone. You know, the moss growing on the stone.
Yeah.
Is this ivy? Is this
I don't
what
know
this is?
what some kind of crawling plant, obviously.
Yeah, if anyone knows what type of vine grows on these stones, on these castles, let us know in the
Yeah.
comments, because I've never really looked into that. And I'm just kind of curious what is usually growing like
I'm
here.
sure in the springtime it looks really pretty.
Yeah, I bet it does. I'd like to see this during the spring at some point and just see what it looks like with the greenery from the vines. But what a beautiful place.
I would definitely want to see this in person when we come to the UK.
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely a castle I'd like to visit.
But it's hard, you know, because there's so many.
There's so many. There's so many, guys. But this is something I want to look into a bit more. I want to look into not only castles. I like looking into old houses and old castles.
Yeah.
And I want to look into more of them. But I also want to look into some of the ancient royal names. I call them ancient. Some people would say, well, 400, 500 years ago is not ancient. But it's definitely old, classic. I don't know what you want to call it. But, you know, the King Henry VIII and Richard III, I believe, they found his body. I'm not going to talk about that right now, but interesting circumstances, to say the least. I believe it's Richard III, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot of other royal figures and people from around that time period I'd like to look into.
We haven't really looked into that.
Not much. No, we really haven't. We haven't looked into like the older royalty much. We haven't looked into the royal family, even modern royal family, all that much. The Queen Elizabeth a bit, but beyond that, really haven't gone in depth on it. You know, we need to look at Princess Margaret. and just, other more modern figures, but also people from the past as well. But awesome, guys. Let us know in the comments what castles, old houses, royal figures, ancient peoples, whatever you want to call them, we should look into next. But I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey. Until next time, peace.
Bye.